yeah, how do you manage, you got 10 leads from content, you got 50 leads from a webinar, you got 5 leads from Contact Us, you got 20 from chat, you got 5 from a booth scan, 5 from a booth hand raiser. You're like, I have all these like different leads of different sources. And like as I said earlier, don't just drop them into a generic nurture. You need to match the source to the intent, to the message, to like what the account is, how big they are, all this stuff. And normally you'd have to have a sales rep like sit down and like bang out a cadence or a marketer or whatever it is. And now, we've built agents, and people on my team have built agents that are able to ingest a large, CSV of raw data, that includes what event it was, the UTM sources, some historical activity on the account. We're able to have the AI then bust out custom cadences per contact for a list of 1,000 contacts, all from different sources, activities, business units, whatever it is, rip out personalized one-on-one emails. Then we work with sales, we ingest those into Sales Loft, and then they actually just kind of tweak and deploy for accuracy. So it's totally enabled personalized scale.
Most marketers are still following old playbooks written decades ago. The rules have changed, but the advice hasn't. Flipping the playbook is your license to rebel. This is your front row seat to finding out how leading CMOs are tearing up the old rules and building strategies that move the needle. If you're tired of being told this is how it's done, let's flip the playbook together. Here's your host, Reza Mayandin.
Welcome to the show. I'm Reza Mayandin. I'm just thrilled to say today my guest is Thomas Sear. He's the head of global pipeline generation at Shopify, where he's spent 5 years building and scaling the demand generation team across the team globally. Thomas, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, happy to be online today and talk to you a little bit more about marketing.
Thank you very much. So, Thomas, let's just start with how did you end up being at Shopify? What was your journey there?
Yeah, definitely. So, my kind of career tenure, started more traditionally in the Bay Area, working in tech for a bunch of different tech companies. Through those experiences, I ended up working at Square back in 2016 or 2017, kind of in its early scaling days, and built their original demand gen team. And way back then, it was like drip, nurture, and Marketo was around, and demand generation was kind of this new phrase. And so I joined Square to build up their first demand generation team. And if I could validate that function was driving value for the company, then that team would grow and scale. And that's what happened there at Square. Had a jungle gym in between to a company called Brex that I helped, same thing, built out demand gen and growth programs very foundationally. I was, like employee number like 45 or something like that. They're a very, very foundational member. And then that led me into my time at Shopify. I was originally hired to build out the retail demand gen team for the Shopify point of sale product. So definitely leaning on my skill set and my experience coming from Square and generally overall marketing to SMB, mid-market, and enterprise business owners. And so, joined Shopify back in 2020 to take on retail demand gen, which is, of course, if you know what happened in 2020, which we all do, it's a really crazy time to take on retail point of sale when all the retail businesses...
I'm surprised. Why? What happened in 2020?
Yeah, right. So, it's interesting, right? I was like going through the interview process, and then, everything kind of comes to fruition. COVID happens, kind of, on the line for a little bit if it's going to go forward, ended up going forward. And it actually provided... a really good, solid first year of allowing us to build on the product, set up all the foundational demand gen programs that hadn't been established yet, which, when you've done it a few times, you kind of take a year to really build out, those foundations for demand gen. So anyway, started retail demand gen, ran that for a couple of years, then got asked to come lead what was then a secretive launch called Commerce Components. So that was Shopify's move and kind of nod into the enterprise space. And so that was, I went and launched Commerce Components, now called Shopify Enterprise. Ran that for, I think it was about a year and a half or something. And then actually we call it Jungle Gym internally, moved on and took on a role owning and operating all of our web properties. So all of our conversion rate optimization, updating our Plus website, our enterprise website, relaunching partners, and just turning our website more into a growth lever, which had kind of been forgotten about in the mix of kind of hyper growth post-COVID on the e-com space. And then have done a couple other roles there, all really framed around demand gen. I launched our Shopify B2B product, and again built out all those demand gen programs and scaled that that product in the first half of the year. Transferred to somebody else internally, and now most recently I'm leading, as you said, pipeline generation, which really entails everything kind of from MQL generation through to close one, close loss deals with our sales team. So it's kind of an amalgamation of what will marketing look like in the future, from a very traditional tops down, create a lead, goes through the funnel, to now in a more matured AI-driven world with really strong data and a really strong database. It's less about generating new leads at the top of the funnel and how we engaging the target accounts and book of business that we already have in the database, and then accelerating pipeline via those programs.
Thank you for that, Thomas.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about B2B and creating awareness earlier in your description of what you've been doing. So how do you end up create awareness?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So I'm going to answer it in two parts, because I think when you go to create awareness in a company like Shopify that already has a brand name, when we were launching point of sale, which had no real awareness, everyone thought Shopify thinks D2C entrepreneur. They weren't thinking in-person selling. They weren't thinking point of sale. The very same thing happened when we launched Shopify for Enterprise. We started seeing that it was the wrong perception of the company. And so when you go into that kind of a situation, we need to build awareness for a new product, but you're an established company with a brand name. It's really about understanding your fundamental product positioning, understanding what's important to that merchant, and then just repeating that message over and over and over again. And so a really good example of this is Shopify B2B. Okay, so Shopify B2B is our wholesale platform. So, not our D2C, like your Allbirds or your Gymshark, right? Like that's your D2C platform. This is purely for companies who want to sell B2B in an e-commerce manner to their suppliers and distributors, right? And so when we went to launch this back in January 2025, we realized we had a really big perception problem. And from the B2B owner side, that wholesale manufacturer, they looked at Shopify and they're like, oh yeah, no, you guys do D2C, you don't do B2B. Although D2C is important to them, they didn't believe we could do B2B. And we further made that harder to win on those accounts when they see so much D2C messaging. They just see us as D2C. And what we learned, not only about driving awareness, but driving consideration, and when we built that go-to-market package, we built these demand gen programs, we just removed everything D2C. We just said, we do B2B, this is how good we are at it, these are all the features, this is why it's happening now, and we just focused on our B2B message. And what we understood with this B2B first messaging and creating awareness around the product and the value is that by leading with B2B, you're just putting the D2C aside, because generally with the awareness at Shopify, that they are familiar with our D2C platform and our D2C excellence. It's about achieving the awareness and the consideration of the new product. So we only spoke about the new product and left the other product off the pages, right? Left them out of the conversation until it's relevant. So in one example at a larger company like that, it's more about reduction of noise and reduction of message. And then in those awareness programs, it's hitting the same message over and over again. Shopify does B2B. We have excellence in it. Here are the key value props that we identified through research. I have another example, if you want it, for startups, which is a much different tactic for awareness and consideration than I think an established
I'm going to
company.
get to that at a later stage,
Cool.
if you get enough time. But we've created awareness, but then how do you turn that awareness into actual sales?
Yeah, I think what you're outlining here and kind of hinting at is it's there's demand creation and there's demand capture, right? And when you're creating awareness, you're creating demand creation, right? Demand capture is your paid Google ads, right? Somebody searching for your company, right? They're not the awareness side there, right? They are aware, they have intent, right? They're coming on in. When you go to create, demand creation and move those users through the funnel, that's your traditional demand gen, right? And that's a really tricky process, and it's something that you first just, I think, need to go back to your product fundamentals and your ICP, your ideal customer profile fundamentals. Okay, are they in contracts? It's a really good first thing to understand, right? You're generating leads from content, from webinars, from thought leadership, from your LinkedIn, from your executive team, or whatever it is, or Facebook, anywhere. That doesn't necessarily, imply that user is ready to buy whatever you're selling. Right, there needs to be a consideration phase, right? It's not that D2C to say buy now, I need a t-shirt, right? There's a consideration period. And so you need to understand, what is that consideration period? What does that life cycle look like? What are the aha moments that a prospect has in their journey that says, wow, this is a product, this is a company that I want to do business with? And this is, those aha moments are called moments of truth in a traditional life cycle mapping. And so when you go to get awareness to, open up or close one up, first I map that journey, understand the ICP, understand what contracts are on, and then understand just basically what they value, right? And then you just feed into that value. It's an old sales trick, right? Make me sick, then give me medicine. right? And I think that applies like when I used to sell veterinary front office solution software, right, to dentists and vets and stuff. It was as simple as, how many missed appointments do you have a month? I have 10. Okay, if we could reduce that to 2, how much money is that worth? Okay, bam, and then you had the call, because I knew they were very financially motivated. Nobody in the seat, they don't make money, right? So whether it's a tech product or a D2C product or whatever it is, like, what is that reason to buy, and how can you highlight that reason to buy?
All right, okay. And what is the biggest mistake you see people make when it comes to creating that?
They treat every lead the same. So that demand, whether you're getting a lead from Google, getting a lead from Meta, you're getting a lead from a booth scan at an event, you're getting a warm lead from a referral from a friend, they put them down like the same nurture path, the same sales path. It always bothers me. I join a lot of webinars, I listen to a lot of like AI talks and stuff, and I immediately get hit up like, do you want to buy it? I'm like, whoa.
Hang on.
You think about just walking to a retail store and you like touch a shirt and they're like, okay, you ready to buy now? Let's buy it. Hey, I'll give you a $5 discount. You got to do it right now by the end of the quarter. And you're like, whoa, like I'm just checking out the shirt, man. I'm just learning here. And so I think like matching the origination source with the assumed intent of that prospect, and then nurturing them along, dog feeding them more information, and then just listening for signal, right? I attend a webinar and I'm getting some more information. I get invited to another one. Maybe there's an ebook, maybe there's a white paper on some topic that, it's relevant to me. So you're like dog fooding my journey on. So I'm continuing to, ingest your content. And then maybe I click on your website, right? Where a good demand gen will have some kind of listening tool. And it's like, okay, they attended a webinar, they've downloaded an ebook, you probably have a scoring model or attribution model for this. And then they're on the website and they look at like the pricing page. Like, okay, that indicates like a really authentic sales outreach should happen, right? Versus like blanketed, hey, Thomas, I saw you on our website. Like, are you ready to buy now? Versus, hey, Thomas, I saw you attended the webinar. You've been reading our guides. Do you have any questions about, XYZ topic? And doing more of a consultative outbound rather than just buy right now. I need to hit my number.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. You touched on something. You were touching on different types of channels that people coming in, right? Tell me about your experience of the different types of channels and what has really given you the best type of customer and what has.
I think, so it's all about the channel mix, especially the further up market, or the larger the cost of your product, or the larger the commitment to adopt the product, the more you're looking at a multi-channel strategy, right? The more simple the transaction, the more transactionary nature of it, down market, that's where you can rely on like single channels, ROAS-based metrics. Up market, more complex, multiple decision makers, that's where it kind of starts to fall apart. And you need to look at like, what is the marketing mix that drove the engagement for these customers that then come inbound, or may my outbound sales team have a better reply rate when they were reaching out. And so from like a specific channel lens, like if we pick up market and we're looking at like that mix, it's, we call a lot of like air cover, right? Like what's the air cover across your ideal customer profile that's like always on? And that'll be things like LinkedIn, but it's not just LinkedIn ads. That's like LinkedIn thought leadership from your executive team, right? Yeah. Because now you can promote those and you can have them cover your audience, right? You can, of course, use LinkedIn as a channel. It's very expensive. The targeting is great, but it's really, you're not going to see the throughput from LinkedIn of like, I'm on LinkedIn, I filled out a lead form, and I came and sold on your business. But what you do know with LinkedIn is that enterprise target account, their decision-making team, they're on LinkedIn like all executives are, and you know that you can get the impressions there. So you have to start thinking of like, how do I provide air cover wherever this target account, where do they spend their time? They're on LinkedIn, they're listening, maybe they're reading Gartner or Forrester, right? Like you got to kind of look at where are they consuming their time, and then how can I influence all of those touch points so that I can build a narrative around what I'm offering, so that when that sales outbound goes out, or when that really good webinar, really nice, thoroughly researched white paper goes out to a CTO and they want to download it, they have all this familiarity in the background. And one thing I want to pick on with channels, and this is just a very personal thought, but I like being a little bit opinionated on these things, is social media. And setting LinkedIn aside, a lot of marketers, especially in the upmarket and enterprise space, completely disregard Meta as a channel of influence. And it should be disregarded as a channel for lead generation for like enterprise or upmarket or large businesses, however you define them in your own business. But if you've ever been on a subway and a bus and an airplane, and you see somebody who's an executive, or executives, you see them around your work, if you watch them on their phone, they will pull up Instagram at some point in the day. They will pull up Meta at some point in the day. They will be on Twitter, X. They go on these platforms. And while you shouldn't goal that platform spend on like a return on a lead generated, you should be considering how can I provide air cover in this overall marketing mix, knowing an executive is on LinkedIn every day, is on Instagram every day, and is checking his X every day. Like, those are opportunities to influence those moments and just provide repeat brand messaging. When I was at Square, they really nailed, it was fast, free, and was it fast, free? And there's like one other adjective that we used, and it was in like every ad, right, for everything Square. And then we just repeated that so much that like, that's what the brand represented. And then when you look at that channel mix, you do those outbounds, you just see the reply rate go up and up as you get more consistent and you provide solid air cover where they're spending their time.
Okay, all right. No, that's fantastic. And the marketing mix channel, amazing. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're creating a campaign and strategy, how can you tell if a campaign's working before the revenue shows up?
Yeah, this is, we just launched a recent campaign at Shopify, so no, we're actually working on this. It's a measurement model, right? I think it's a brilliant question, actually, measurement models on campaigns, right? Where a really good campaign, at the end of the day, you would hope to see something like more brand search at the tail end of that campaign. That's not going to be associated with the campaign, right? That's somebody going on Google and searching for your company. If you see that start to tick up, like, wow, your campaign's really been successful. That's the gold standard, right? People searching for your company, high conversion rate. But to get to your point, early days, how do you tell if a campaign's working? It's your traditional upper funnel metrics. Cost per impression, and that's more about like your targeting and your book and like how you're running your audiences. It's more about like click-through rate on the original ad set. So like say we launch a new ad set, and it's all a bunch of customer stories or something like that. Like, and it's a new ad format. Like, you immediately want to look at those CTRs or click-through rates and like understand how is this performing against baseline of like general awareness ads or other campaigns. How is it performing against direct response? Are we seeing the click-through rate that we want to? Because a portion of the longevity of a campaign is getting somebody to your site, hitting that pixel on your site so you can retarget them throughout the whole campaign and continue your campaign narrative over multiple months. And so top of funnel metrics, it's like click-through rate, leads generated, and then lead to MQL conversion rate. A lead is a lead, and MQL is a qualified lead. There's that quality bar. So it's basically like, okay, are the ads engaging? Click-through rate. How many leads am I generating? Like, is it landing? Is the CTA on the page resonating? You can use that by like session to lead conversion rate. How many conversions on page? And then of those leads, how many of them are converting to MQL? So basically, is my targeting strong? Is this message resonating with my target audience? So I would just look at those first three stages of like ad performance, email click-through rate, email, open replies, number of those. Look at leads generated, session to lead conversion rate, and then lead to MQL conversion rate to see like, are we hitting quality? It's totally possible you run a campaign, drive a shit ton of leads, and they're all really bad quality. And you're like, gosh, we like missed the mark. They're all too small for our product, or they're all too big, or they're all the wrong job titles, right? So you kind of just course correct that first couple weeks of a campaign and just continually tool to get it right.
All right. Okay. All right. That's great. And what do you now? You've driven all these leads in, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got all these job titles and everything else. What do you use to actually analyze this information? Is there any favorite platforms or tools do you use? Or let's talk about the dreaded AI.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I would say like just from like routing and scoring, right? I mean, most folks will have somebody to partner with internally, right? Like a MarTech or a sales ops or something like that, or RevOps. Who you would partner pretty deeply with under be sales, a marketing leader, and then that leader to decide, what that scoring model looks like and how to grade the quality. And then what I was going to say about, what was the back half of your question one more time, Reza?
Around AI. So.
Oh yeah.
Is AI having any impact on what you're doing at the moment, and are you using it?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about that in a second. But you asked specifically about like softwares.
Yes.
I've jumped between a lot of softwares just to say, like, I always was a big fan of Marketo. We don't use it internally anymore at Shopify, but we had previously, and I was a Marketo expert before. I always love Marketo. I think that you can do a lot of really great listening tools from like repeat visitors, sending alerts to sales, You can do like some like rudimentary scoring models and MQL models in it that work pretty well. Lean data is another tool that works really well more on the sales ops side for like back-end routing rules and organization that way. So from like a tooling perspective, I kind of found those two have been, a couple of my favorites. But from an AI perspective now, we're needing, it's less reliance on those tools and what we can do internally. And what I honestly dreamed about as a marketer for 15 years, basically until the last year or two for it to happen, is like, how do you manage, you got 10 leads from content, you got 50 leads from a webinar, you got 5 leads from Contact Us, you got 20 from chat, you got 5 from a booth scan, 5 from a booth hand raiser. You're like, I have all these like different leads of different sources. And like as I said earlier, don't just drop them into a generic nurture. You need to match the source to the intent, to the message, to like what the account is, how big they are, all this stuff. And normally you'd have to have a sales rep like sit down and like bang out a cadence or a marketer or whatever it is. And now, we've built agents and people on my team have built agents that are able to ingest a large, CSV of raw data, that includes what event it was, the UTM sources, some historical activity on the account. We're able to have the AI then bust out custom cadences per contact for a list of, 1,000 contacts, all from different sources, activities, business units, whatever it is, rip out personalized one-on-one emails. Then we work with sales, we ingest those into Sales Loft, and then they actually just kind of tweak and deploy for accuracy. So it's totally enabled personalized scale, whereas before it was kind of like, this pool of leads looks the same, like they'll just get the same experience because we just didn't have the ability and computing power to like truly personalize at the one-to-one level at scale. It's a game changer. Really incredible stuff.
Seen an uplift on that in terms of like results?
We run a bunch of reports on like sentiment, click-through, open rate, and then like of course your KPI of like created opportunities or sales accepted opportunities or leads, and we see that like I wouldn't say that the AI like outperforms human as far as like comparing one-to-one. I find kind of they can end up being about the same over time. However, it's the scale that you unlock and the personalization that you unlock that's where you get all those incremental gains and change the velocity of your funnel. It's more on like your ability to do more than it is necessarily to say like it's better at writing the email or it's better at building this outbound program,
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, talking about personalization, we've got ABM and account-based marketing. What do you feel about that when it comes to AI? Because I have a very specific opinion about it, but I want to hear yours.
AI is always going to AI will always fall to the medium. Like even when I was just saying like, hey, it can do mass personalization, it can kind of get like, this is where you came from, it's a more personalized email, and that's going to get you to like, probably like a B plus if you're doing like a grading scale, right? A plus is like, phenomenal. It's going to get you like a B, right? Like AI will always kind of get you like good, but not like phenomenal. And I think when you think about like account-based marketing, what makes, how do you take like a really personalized, good outbound campaign and like turn it into ABM? Like what's the difference? And it's the difference between a B or a C and like an A plus, right? It's applying that additional layer of human intelligence to look at that account, like something like account-based marketing, like where it's like, oh, I saw you went to Stanford, you work at this company, and you recently were on a business trip in China speaking at an event or something. Like, okay, that's a bunch of information for me. So I can do all the account stuff of like why your company should buy Shopify. But now I can layer on a personal component of, okay, I know you went to Stanford. I'm gonna send you a mug from Stanford and a kit that's like, I don't know, whatever, some kind of like personalized kit or experiential mailer, invite you to a Stanford game. Maybe it doesn't have to be Stanford or university. It can be kind of anything that you've been up to or interested in. And that's what takes you from like, oh, it's just some like really good sales outbound or some good marketing into like, they personally thought about me and built an experience and did something really meaningful. If I could give you an example,
please.
There's some people on my team who manage ABM and are doing some really incredible things. And one of the ones that we were talking about is there's an account with, it's like a shoe company, a conglomerate that owns many different shoe brands, right? And the girl on my team is trying to think of something creative to send. There's 2 founders. And was looking and found one of their original first ads this shoe company did, I think it was like the 20s or 30s, in a newspaper, and it's the original stamp that printed the newspaper back when, there were stamps made to print every newspaper. And she bought the stamp. And then she also found that they used to make matchbooks, this shoe company did, and found a bunch of the matchbooks. And so what they're going to be doing is sending the stamp in like a case, like a framed case, and the matchbooks to each one of the founders and saying, hey, you guys are like a 100-year company. Shopify is a 100-year company, kind of like this, like, you come from the past, you've gotten to here today. It's just a really personal touch that I think is just going to really wow them. And that's where you make it from like you're a C or a B to like true one-to-one account-based marketing, research them, found something really interesting and cool, and now we're going to surprise and delight.
That is incredible. I love that.
Thanks.
This is a thing that AI is not going to be able to do, is
Never.
it? It's not going to be able to go and ravage through that antique shop to get that stamp art, right?
Right.
And that's where he loses. It's not going to be able to. I mean, unless there are robots. There are said robots going into these antique shops.
I think we're really cooked then, man. If they're doing that, we're all done for. But it's about that final. It's the final mile. It's the surprise and delight. Your one to few playbook versus your one to playbook should use the same fundamentals of air cover, webinars, big events. Inviting them out to a dinner if they're going to be at the biggest event, whatever the biggest event of the year is in your industry. Like, what are your target accounts that are going to be there? Spin them off, go get a bar tab, go invite them to the best restaurant in the city. You got to kind of schmooze a little bit, in that upmarket space for sure in the ABM world.
Of course. Okay, all right. So you were talking about your team, and I want to get into building demand generation. Let's say we've stripped out your demand gen team, and we take it right down to zero, and business is going to start a whole demand gen team.
Yeah.
What would be the first 3 hires and why?
Yeah. Okay. So it's different. So it's going to depend on your company structure and what, if they have to own and operate channels or not. So as in they have to actually build paid ad campaigns, or if you have an agency or whatever. So that would kind of put a split. But I think the character of the individual doesn't change. Like when I look for a good demand gen leader, they usually come from a background of they have done some kind of performance marketing, like at scale. They have usually done some other kind of like campaign or like multi-channel strategy or management. And that's kind of usually like the first 2 I look for on like a sniff test. And the reason being is just having a performance marketing background and understanding what drives influence, what metrics to look at, like we were saying with campaign success at the top of the funnel, being able to stitch together, a more nuanced journey of data points from web sessions to paid ad clicks to email outbound and webinar invites, and stitching that journey just requires somebody I think who's a little bit more familiar with data and the technical platform side of analyses. So my first hire would always be somebody who has like a performance marketing background, is analytical, kind of customer journey, campaign management type background, and that would be like my first lieutenant. The goal in that hire is like, kind of the most senior person, individual contributor who can just like own and operate and run across all these different programs. The second hire is going to be like your account-based marketing hire, right? Who's like, okay, great. We have the fundamentals down, right? I have email programs built from the first person. I have, paid marketing fundamentals. I can turn on paid ads or turn them off whenever I want. Like I have all the tools in my, my toolkit. Now I can go as an ABM specialist or whatever you want to call them, and actually start deploying programs and working on it in that way. And then the third person I would say is, it's going to depend how much platform management you have to do as a team versus external teams handling it. And so if you're doing external teams handling some of the platform management, I would probably say I'd hire somebody who's really good at AI, gum loop, cursor, data analysis, because that's where you hit scale, right? First person's building foundations and then iterating and optimizing on those foundations. Second person's ABM, iterating and building on that. Third person's AI, so it's looking at the first 2 people's work and saying, how can I increase the efficacy of this? How can I cover more accounts but maintain the same quality, right? And so it's kind of that 1, 2, 3 approach.
Okay, all right. And where do you see people making a mistake when it comes to demand gen in hiring, and they hire too late?
I think the mistakes in demand gen are more higher. You want generalists. You want somebody who's familiar with multiple marketing channels and has experience. But where you got to double click is that like they have had actual hands-on keyboard. So if I was looking at a candidate who came from like a demand gen team, they're like, oh yeah, no, I ran demand gen, it was really great. And I asked them like, okay, tell me about your paid programs. And they're like, oh yeah, Jim on the team handled all that. I'm like, okay, have you ever managed paid programs yourself previously? Like have you ever actually built, Facebook ads and all these ads? And then say no. I kind of go, like that probably gave me a little bit of a pause, because it's like you were just part of the team. You weren't influencing the ideas. It wasn't your responsibility to take that data and turn it into strategies and outputs and learnings. And so, I think the mistake is saying like you just pick somebody who has been on a team. I always want to double click in those interviews and really like, what did you do? Let's get into the weeds. Tell me about the copywriting process. Who supported you? How did you get the creative done? How many people did you work with? And you'll see that the people you interview who really light up during that and like really like to talk about the weeds and get excited about it, like that's the people you want, because that's the people that can get it done and aren't going to come to you and say, I need money, I need agency, I need this, I need that. These are the people who will just figure it out. And when you're early on demand gen, you got to ship and you got to show results. So you want those lieutenants on your team.
All right, amazing. And do you feel there is a difference between people who do demand gen for B2B versus B2C or B2C? Or can you just pick one from one and then put it into another?
It's way different. Because it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's just like, it's the buyer, it's a group of decision makers. It's a multi-threaded decision-making process. It's seeing somebody at an event, inviting them to a dinner, following up with emails. They go cold. You send them a one-to-one guide. You surprise and delight. Like, the further up market, the more complicated your product is, the less applicable a B2C background is. And I even say, I've been doing marketing for 15 years, almost all primarily, traditional B2B. And when I was back at Square and I was doing B2B acquisition, but for the down market segment, so like really small merchants, entrepreneurs getting started, it was actually a bit of a stretch for my skill set, because I had to start thinking as in a B2C type of marketing and flashy and more click based, and it's just a different type of marketing and action and activity and like thought, because it's more one off, and up market's like long decisions. So I think it's a really complicated question to ask, because people can jump between skill sets, but I'd say I think it'd be hard even for somebody like me to like go lead a B2C team. I think that'd be pretty challenging for like a D2C product.
All right. Okay. All right. And when it comes to B2B, now, if there was one thing the listeners should take away from you today, what would it be?
One thing that listeners should take away today about B2B marketing is...
Or demand.
Yeah. I'd just say, it's, I don't want to say anything about AI because I know that's just all the talk right now, but it really is, though, it's investing in your foundational skill set in AI. The future of demand gen looks a lot like the team I have now, which is a very small team of very skilled, highly experienced individuals who are learning and getting really good at AI and have all this channel background and channel knowledge from their experience. Now they're using AI and they're using this background knowledge and their skill set to now build programs and demand gen that has just a huge outsized impact of a team of 30, but you're doing it with a team of 5. And so I'd just say, anybody listening, just like lean in, learn about Gumloop, learn about Cursor, learn how to master these systems and these LLMs, because it will just get you farther, faster, and allow you to create an outsized impact, and they're only getting better every day. Demand gen, how it was 3 years ago, is nowhere what it looks like heading into the future.
All right. Okay. Wow. And what do you see in the future? I know this is another question.
Yeah, it's okay. No, I think it's what I said.
Pandora's box now.
Yeah. I know, but I think it's what it said, right? I think it's frankly and unfortunately, it's going to be much smaller teams who are able to create outsized impact. It's having one PMM or one content person who's very they're excelled, they're tenured, they know these functions deeply, and they're able to provide the fundamental baseline inputs into your models or your AI, whatever you're building on, that will allow you to take their fundamental expertise and then scale it out, right? So you still need these experts, but you're utilizing that fundamental knowledge to blow it out of the water. And I think that's what we'll see in AI in the future is there's only so much information on the internet that AI can digest right now. It's not always updated. It's not always super relevant. You need that contextual expert to feed in your own internally built, agents to then, create programs based on more relevant information for those target customers or prospects.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Thomas. This has been really, really fascinating. Thomas Sear, thank you for flipping the playbook with us today. I really appreciate on your input.
Yeah, of course, man. It was good, Reza. It was good to catch up. And if anybody sees this, feel free to connect, shoot me questions. Of course, maybe we'll do this again. It was fun.
We'll share your contact details and on the LinkedIn information on our show box so people will be able to find it. This is a new podcast, so we'd appreciate anyone who's listening to spread the word and give us as much feedback as possible. I'm Reza Mayandin, co-founder of SALT.agency. This has been Flipping the Playbook. Thank you for listening.
Flipping the Playbook is produced by SALT.agency. We don't just optimize for search and AI, we optimize for business growth across SEO content and digital PR. Check out our links in the show notes. Thanks for listening.